This is Freewheeling, a podcast of McElwain Presbyterian Church in Pensacola, Florida. Freewheeling with Loop and Lou. Loop, a.k.a. Rob Looper, and Lou, a.k.a. Dennis Lewis.
Welcome to Freewheeling with Loop and Lou. I'm Lou.
And I'm Austin Brown.
Yeah, everyone thought that it was going to be Loop, but unfortunately, Loop is not here. I think he said he has strep.
Well, he's like, yeah, I don't know. The dark soul of the Grinch of Christmas apparently got hepatitis, maybe strep throat. Either way, he's languishing now on a couch somewhere.
Oh, man, yeah, and he's not here with us. But I decided to go ahead and do a podcast anyway with our good friend Austin. He's no stranger to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite things, movies. Yeah. I've roped you in.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited too. And now, why don't you just go ahead and tell us about this awesome movie that you introduced me to?
Yeah, okay. So here's I want to know, first of all, I'm kind of a movie nerd and an aficionado of movies. And I'm just curious, how often would you say you watch a movie? I mean, how often?
Okay, so there are two stages of my life. Mm-hmm. There was a stage where I had time to watch movies, and then there was a stage where I didn't. So I'm in a stage in my life where I'm not able to. Yeah. Okay, so every Friday we have movie night.
Oh,
so
you do?
At the very least, it's once a week, but it's kid stuff.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like I don't know if I should count that.
So you and your wife don't like it. 9 o'clock, kids are in bed or whatever, and you don't.
Oh no, we're too tired.
You're like bedtime.
Yeah. But in my movie watching days, like 3 a week.
Oh, wow.
4, yeah.
Okay. So you loved movies.
Oh, yeah.
And you do love movies. Yeah. Okay. So would you say once a month now? Maybe not even that?
Yeah, not even. Honestly, like I can't tell you. Anyway, this movie was the last movie I've actually sat down and watched with my wife in a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And I kind of pushed this on you. I'm like, here we have a movie. Force Majeure. Now, it's not... Now, people... my guess is that 99% of the people listening to this have not heard of Force Majeure.
Probably.
And you know what? I forget. I looked it up. Do you remember what Force Majeure means?
Isn't it like force of nature or something?
Hold on a second. It was...
Or force event?
Force Majeure. Unforeseeable circumstances that prevent someone from fulfilling a contract. That's one. But here's, I think, the other one they mean. Irresistible compulsion or greater force. Irresistible compulsion or greater force. And I think that's significant to the title of this film, because when I saw this with my wife, we probably spent like 45 minutes to an hour afterwards, just mulling over, like, what an awesome but thought-provoking movie.
Yeah.
So I have been eager to pull others in to this whole thing. Talk to me about this movie. So I roped you in.
Yeah.
You and your wife watched it.
Yes.
In between battling sickness with your kids.
Absolutely.
And so the movie's called Force Majeure. It's a foreign film, and there's different themes. I hope we can bring out. But let's just talk about, I think, the central significance. Oh, let me just say right here up front. I suppose two caveats, right? Two caveats would be, one, we're going to spoil the snot out of this, okay?
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen Force Majeure and you're a kind of person who likes to watch movies and you want to watch it, I'd say pause right now. It's on Netflix. You can stream it wherever. Yeah. Go watch it. That's caveat number one. Caveat number two is, obviously people have different convictions when they watch movies.
That's true.
Right? I mean, there's sometimes movies have language or violence or sexuality and nudity and all those kinds of things.
Right.
This is there's some language and there is a little bit of nudity in this. So I would highly recommend picking up something like VidAngel.
Okay, yes.
That's an app that you can get that can, you can edit out whatever you want. It's unfortunately, they're like embroiled in this court controversy. Yeah. And so I hope that all gets worked out. But I love VidAngels. I would highly recommend it. Lets you go in and just filter things out. just disappears.
Yeah.
It's great.
And I mean, I think I told you before, I actually, because I was getting up and coming back, I actually probably missed that scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's short. It's just like a husband and wife in a bathroom changing, that kind of thing. So,
Okay.
But anyway, so force majeure, it's going to introduce, I think, brilliant themes that revolve around forgiveness, human nature, minimalization and justification of wrongdoing.
That's true.
There's big elements of that. And just kind of these awkward dynamics of when there's impediments to a relationship and restoration. So anyway, here's the central scene that I want to paint of the movie. So you have this family, husband and wife, 2 kids. What are they? Maybe like 11 and 9, boy and a girl?
Yeah. Yeah, I would
like
say
that.
so. Yeah.
They go on a 5-day vacation to the Alps. And, they're just kind of going along. They're skiing, having a good time. And pretty early on into the movie, they go out for lunch. And they're at like a resort. And they're on this deck, this back deck, this kind of balcony thing where you can eat lunch. And it's overlooking this beautiful vista of the mountains.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, isn't this just great? Kicking back in the sun. Yeah. Just a beautiful thing. Well, periodically set off.
Mini avalanches.
Yeah. Well, one of these goes off. And they're like, oh, look. It's way off in the distance. And you see off in the distance this tumbling force of snow.
Yeah.
Pretty small at first, moving pretty fast, building into momentum, and the cinematography is amazing.
Yes.
I don't know how they really did this, but it
That was
looks
good.
really real. And what it is like, oh, it's off in the distance and everything's safe. Well, a few seconds later, it's getting really big, really fast, and it seems to be bearing down on where they're at.
Yes.
So much so that at one point, everybody stands up, like, oh no. And this husband's son, Harry, he's like, Daddy, kind of doing this. He's like, no, son, no, it's okay. He's holding up his phone, like recording it. And all of a sudden, the kid's like, Daddy! He's really, really scared.
Yeah.
And when it really becomes evident that it's going to, like, hit them, the father, and now keep in mind, this all happens within just, like, a couple seconds. But the father clearly, like, starts to set down his phone and fumble with some things. Then he's, like, shuffling around very, very quickly on the table. Apparently picks up his phone and, like, some gloves.
Yeah.
Past his son, who's screaming his name.
Yeah.
Pushes past, like, shoves another person out of the way and is running for his life. While his wife is watching silently, clutching the children, watching him run.
Yeah.
Now, what happens after that?
Well, what happens after that is the avalanche didn't actually come. What actually hits them is sort of the smoke of the avalanche or the afterwards of the avalanche. And then slowly, people began to come back, and you can hear the wife asking the children,
Right.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you okay? And the son is saying, and this broke my heart, Where's Daddy?
Yeah, where's Daddy?
Where's Daddy?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what? And so people slowly start coming back, and then he comes back.
He kind of meanders back, kind of like, a little bit like shaken, but a little bit of a dog with his tail tucked.
No, I interpret it as if he just comes back and pretends like nothing.
Well,
really
he does, doesn't he?
happened.
Right? I mean, he's kind of, his steps are. Yeah, you could, I guess, take it as though he was shaken up.
Yeah, he was shaking up. Yeah.
But yeah, he sits down at the table
and starts saying, "Oh, that was crazy. And just starts eating. I think he starts eating the food.
Yeah, they start eating the food. Now, okay, so that's I know, right? Well, so obviously, it kind of leaves you as the watcher. I don't know about you, but I paused and went back and watched it multiple times because
Really?
I'm like, what was it? Like, what happened right there? Was it really an act of cowardice? Like, yeah, it really was.
It really was.
Like, looking at it, like in slow motion, like, nah, he was like, now I should say something too. The fact that he picked up his phone is significant.
Yes. I thought that was egregious.
Yeah, well, why?
Well, okay. I've been in several situations where, I didn't know the situation, but I just acted. And in my mind, I thought, what's most important for me to grab or what's most important for me to save? Classic example. And I thought about this. So people rarely come through our cul-de-sac, but they do.
Yeah.
And my kids are out playing. I'll never forget some person just whips through our cul-de-sac. And I remember I had something in my hand. I just remember throwing it down and just darting out to the street and grabbing my two sons because they were in the road and just like pulling them out of the way. Now, the person whipped through, but they slowed down very quickly, so I don't want to paint them in a nasty light. But I didn't know that. I thought, is this a...
But your first instinct was, grab my kid.
Whatever's most important.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, whatever I deem to be most in danger, most important, that's what I grab for first.
Right. And and what's significant is in the early scenes of the movie, they're on vacation. He's clearly a very busy man.
Yes.
And always doing work. Yes. And he's like laying in bed and the phone's vibrating vibrating and vibrating.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Are you going to answer that?" No. We're on vacation, honey. Well, she goes like to the bathroom or something and he starts texting. "Are you on your phone?" "No, I'm not on my phone." You know what I mean? So clearly he's a workaholic.
Yeah. That's a good pickup. I didn't pick that up initially. But that's a good pickup.
So it's setting it up, the subtlety of like, you're a workaholic and you love your work. So the fact that he grabs his phone, pushes past his kid. Okay, so what happens after that? The wife is like cold shoulder.
Yes.
Right, big time.
Rightfully so.
Yes, they go back to the room. She's really quiet, really distant. So then they go out for dinner with this first couple. And she brings it up.
Yeah.
And it's like giving him an opportunity to own up.
Mm-hmm.
And what's he do? Do you remember?
Yes, of course I remember. So what he does that's so funny is he actually just like plays it off initially, like, "Yo, yeah, that was crazy." But then when she presses him, he's like, "Oh, I just have a different view of it."
Yeah.
Like, is that how you looked at it? Because I looked at it a lot differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy to me.
Well, it even, I thought it was like the look on my wife's face when he kind of pushed her wine bottle away and was like, "Oh, honey, I think you've been having too much."
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Almost like you're kind of, this perspective is crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So fast forward again. The relationship is clearly getting built tension. And I think the movie does a really good job of making you feel this tension. It's hard to communicate this, but it's really there. So then, the significant moment, I feel like one of the most significant moments is there's another couple, clearly friends of theirs, who come to the room and they're like eating dinner with them. And now keep in mind, by this point in the movie, there's been a lot of him minimalizing, not really addressing it. There's just this chill, this coldness between the couple. And she feels the need to bring this up again with the friends. Now, my question to you is, why? So she brings it up at dinner with the other friends, and now she brings it up at dinner with these friends. Why? Why do you think? What's the psychology?
Well, that's a great question. So here's what I was thinking. It didn't escape me that alcohol was present. Copious amounts of alcohol was present, and she was consuming copious amounts of alcohol. Was present.
Actually, it's...
And I think that was her coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Because he failed in his duty to address the situation with moral clarity. Yeah. So as to say, "Honey, I'm sorry in this moment. I don't know what happened. I did something wrong. Please forgive me."
Right, because he never does that, does he?
He never does that.
He never does it.
Never does that.
Minimizes, justifies,
up to this point,
excuses.
That's up to this point. So whenever, and I found this instructive, and I told my wife, whenever I don't act with moral clarity in my home, my wife is going to look elsewhere for it or to deal with that particular situation. Same thing with my children and on and on and on. So in answering your question, I felt that she was using alcohol to address it, but the burden was too bare to where she needed to communicate this to other people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I also feel like there was a sense in which she wanted a mediator there or some other outside voice to adjudicate this.
Absolutely.
Because what does she do? She tells the story how she really sees it, and it's this painful scene.
Yeah.
And she tells it accurate. It's funny though, she does change a few things to the details actually, which is kind of interesting about memory. I thought that was fascinating they did that. But Anyway, this other couple sitting on the couch really awkwardly, because this is a very tense moment. Like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? What's going on? And then there's this key moment where she's like, hey, you know what? Everything's been recorded on your phone. Let's have them watch it and let's see what they see.
Yes.
And it was at that moment you could tell his body language.
Okay, okay. So I know you caught this. So here's the thing. Up to this point, me and my wife was dialoguing at this point, and I said, isn't it interesting how you can have one reality, that which happened?
Yes.
And then how people have the different perspectives of it, but there's only one true reality.
There's only one.
And so before she brought out the phone, I was thinking, remember, there was this little interplay where they're like, right after it happened, where he was like, we need to have the same version.
Yes, and they shook hands.
On it.
It's like this contractual, like, we'll just brush this under the rug.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like, and he was comfortable with the version because the version left out his transgression.
Yeah.
But when she introduced this objective standard, which is the phone, then take it from there.
You hear Harry screaming on the phone. And the couple, gotta love this friend. He's like, well, you gotta take the whole man in view. He's just trying to get his butt out of trouble, right? Yeah. And he's just doing whatever he can. Hey, man, I'm trying to help you here. But in the husband's body language, it's obvious that it sinks in.
Yes.
He already knew, but now he really knows. So, okay, we can hit the pause button here before we move on. And I'm just kind of curious. So, the issues up to this point are, we could talk about, wait a minute, is a person morally responsible in a context that is terrifying and panic-inducing? That's one.
That's a good point, yeah.
The other one would be, does it really show your nature, him grabbing the phone and not his kids? I mean, does it really? And what about gender roles? Okay, so there's I think there's at least three things on the table. What interests you most first?
Of those three,
or maybe you have something else.
Well, I have a few things, but these are good places to start. Of the three that interest me the most, there's one that in our time is very relevant. It's at the gender issue. But I want to put that aside, and I want to take up this issue. Is a person morally responsible for the way they act in a particular situation? Right,
so in an extenuating terrifying situation.
So, in the midst of talking with this about my class, right?
Yeah.
I was dialoguing with them a little bit. We were having this interplay.
So you painted the picture for them.
I painted the picture for them. We actually watched the
okay, you watched the clip. Okay, so they saw it. Good.
And then I said, so one of the young ladies that was there, she's incredibly bright. She said, I would like to, it's hard to answer a question like that because I posed a similar question, like, can he be faulted for making this decision in split second?
Right.
And she said, I would need to know, and of course the movie doesn't provide this, a little bit of his character and his experiences. Then it dawned on me, think about it this way. Let's say one of the more highly trained people in our military right now are Green Berets and Navy SEALs, right? For those men, they go through a fair amount of training. So when they get in these situations that catch them off guard, they react not so much instinctually, but with very controlled ways of thinking in order to neutralize whatever the situation is. And I think one of the faults of our society is that Christianity used to provide this training through catechism, through instruction, preaching, and teaching. So when we do get into these situations where we have to make split-second decisions about moral issues, we've been trained and we have a body of knowledge to react from. And so what I told them is, in our modern society, we don't have that. We don't train men. This is how you need to act in this situation. This is how you need to think through these complex moral problems. We sort of take for granted that if we say enough things, they will just magically do the right thing. But that's not reality. We don't say that about our fighting men. We don't just pick some rando off the street and say, okay, you're going to go capture bin Laden with no training. Well, the same thing is true with morality. Specific moral training conditions one in one's heart and mind to be able to react rightly in a situation, even though we're caught off guard. So based on that reasoning, right, and that's what the Bible says. That's why Deuteronomy 6 says, hey, train your children. Paul says that we ought to do a fair bit of training with our children. So anyway, based on that, I would say, yes, we're culpable because there was a bit of training that needed to take place for him to act.
So you think it really does, in those moments, reflect a person's nature?
Yes, I do.
So what would you, if I just play devil's advocate, okay, the process for something like Navy SEALs is a weeding out process. What if you say, what if the people who couldn't cut it, it's just not in their nature. They just couldn't do it. So therefore, those who do make it, they have, as it were, fertile soil to be trained to be able to endure that. So the rest of the people, we wouldn't fault them like, you don't have the stuff of a Navy SEAL. So what if somebody said, you just don't have the stuff of moral constitution?
That's a good point. From a biblical perspective, I would say that on one level, I agree with that. I agree with that. No matter the training, there are some people that will just act wrongly in a particular situation. But to say that doesn't absolve them from culpability, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Inability never does,
training
takes away
clearly comes into play.
Yes.
Mindset clearly comes into play. And here's an interesting thought. When Christ was in the garden, he was clearly in tremendous distress. I mean, like a physiological response.
Yeah.
But yet, he endured for the joy set before him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because, okay, what was going on? There was powerful force majeures going on in his life.
Yeah.
Take this cup away from me.
Yeah.
But yet, not my will, but yours.
Yeah.
And he is so sanctified and so set apart that he could, as it were, endure the force majeure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's right. But what would you say? What do you say about this guy? I mean, is he really culpable? Is he really, because of what he did, an object to be scorned in your mind?
Now, that's an interesting question. Now, before I answer that question, is he an object to be scorned?
Yeah.
I have to ask, okay, based on the information, did you expect him to do something different? Before I answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't give us much.
They didn't give us much.
So it could have gone either way, in my mind.
But was there an expectation?
Yes.
Was there a standard, a base level standard in your
clearly
mind?
because the wife certainly thought so.
Yes.
And the girlfriend of the other friend who came over after they talked with the let's call him Avalanche Man.
Yeah.
After they talk with Avalanche Man and his wife, they're out by the elevator.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like, I think you would do it too. You know what I mean? And he's like, his manhood's being like challenged, right? So anyway, the women in this movie clearly have the standard.
And I would say even the children.
And even the children.
Even the children, right?
Yes.
So there's a standard. So getting back to your question, I would say, should he be up for public scorn?
Yeah, I mean, does he deserve that?
Does he deserve that? I would say yes, because of the expectation.
Yeah.
If there were no, and this is something that recently, over the last 3 years in my thinking, has really become clear, that there's a certain expectation on us, right? Mm-hmm. The gospel puts expectations on us. Our spouse puts expectations on us. You as my friend put a certain expectation on me, right?
Yeah.
When I don't live up to that expectation, right, for whatever reason, I have to be called back to the expectation. So is he worthy of public scorn? I think it depends on the expectation you have on him.
Yeah. Well, and I think what the movie does, I think that's one question to ask. You could go, should the man, like her natural instinct as a mother, she grabbed her children.
Exactly.
And you would think, as a man, the head of the household, who's to be a protector, he should have wanted to do that. Now, that's one theme in the movie, but I think the more significant theme is how he handles it. Right? Yeah. Because it really introduces, let's say, he is an object of scorn on some level, but I think the scorn really emerges. Like, had he, right after that event when he was in the hallway, talking to his wife initially, and he's like, is everything okay? She's like, yeah. And then she's kind of like, do you think everything's okay? Yeah. And he kind of does this whole kind of everything's fine. Yeah, everything's fine. He should have said, honey, I am really sorry for what happened there. You know what I mean? And humbled himself and asked for forgiveness.
Yeah.
But I feel like the movie is building on that idea of like, wait a minute, he lost his manhood. He hurt his family.
Yes.
And he will not grapple with that.
No.
He will not grapple with asking for forgiveness. So what does he do after that? In your mind, I see the movie after that point really starting to wrestle with a theme like him trying to fill this gap. I mean, I hate to put you on the spot, but can you think of what would be one way after talking with the couple that he tries to fill the gap, as it were? Does anything come to your mind?
That he did?
Yeah, that he did. I'll give you one example. Right. Him and his buddy are on top of the mountain skiing. And remember, he's like, man, can we just talk? And he kind of plumps down in the snow.
Yeah, okay.
And he's like, dude, I went to therapy for like 2 years and it didn't do anything for me. But when I just screamed from my gut, I mean, like really screamed, it helped. And so he's kind of screaming, like, maybe this will solve my problem. Like just screaming, like just some kind of primordial scream, right? Well, that doesn't solve it, does it?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't solve it. And then there's like this scene then where they get back down. I love this scene because the whole idea is like he's lost his manhood, and he needs forgiveness. So they're sitting there, on like reclining chairs, drinking their beers, and what happens? A woman comes up.
Yeah, a woman comes up. I actually, so this is one of the little bits that I saw, but from what I gathered afterwards, a woman comes up and said something to him, but it didn't mean to.
Well, she said, "Hey, I just want you to tell you guys, they're looking cool with their sunglasses, all studly and stuff." And this young girl comes up and is like, hey, you see my friends over there? They think you're the hottest guys here. And they're like, kind of like, all right, thank you much. And then she comes back and she says, I'm so sorry.
You're the wrong guys.
They were actually pointing at 2 other guys. And they just like deflate. I mean, completely deflate. So it was almost kind of like, being manly.
Yeah.
That will restore me, restore my manliness. But it doesn't, does it?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. So what happens after that? He finally just breaks down in a complete crying bonkers mess. He's wailing. He's in his room and the kids come up and they're like hugging him.
Yeah.
But remember, did you see that part, or were you out of the room?
I did. I did remember that part.
Okay. Yeah. And what is the daughter? Mommy, come here, and she doesn't want to come there, right?
Yeah.
So I take it that she's still kind of cool towards all this. Yeah. What's significant? I think after that.
I think I had to go out then because I don't remember. I picked it up at that point when I came back into the room. I kind of picked it up with him.
Were they on the ski slope?
On the slopes.
Okay. No. Yeah. Now. I take that to mean, because they go skiing down in this really like foggy area.
Yeah.
And they're like being real careful. He's taking the lead, kids between him skiing down, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, shoot, where's Mama?
Yes.
And you can hear help from the top, from the top of the mountain. And he's like, oh, wait here, kids. He's like getting off his skis and he goes running up the mountain into this darkness.
Yeah.
And you wait. And you wait, and here he comes carrying his wife down in his arms.
Yeah.
Now, did she just set that up?
I think she sets it up.
Yeah.
Like I was telling my class, I was like, I think, and here's the crazy thing. She offered a way of redemption.
There you go. She offered a way, didn't she?
She offered a way of redemption.
Because remember, she got up right after and went up to get her skis.
And she went up and get her skis.
So it was almost like, I have forgiven you, and I'm giving a way to reinstate.
Thank you, your
manliness, and in front of the kids.
Yes,
because he finally, basically, when he broke down and he asked, basically in his own way, for forgiveness, like it was interesting because he said, "I'm a slave of my nature. I cheat at games with my kids. I'm unfaithful," and he's lumping it all together. He says, "I hate living with myself. I hate that me. I hate that me. Please forgive me." So I thought that was an interesting window into this idea of force majeure.
Yeah.
Being kind of stuck to that. Now, before we maybe talk about some of the other things, I'm just curious what your take is on the end of the movie now.
Okay. I thought that the movie should have ended after after they come out and they walked out of ski lodge.
Yeah.
But the movie didn't end that way.
It doesn't end there.
It ended in a way that was just completely confusing to me until I began to think about it. I'm like, what is the significance of it?
Yeah.
Like, why is it there? So let me throw out a couple of things. First of all, I think, that on the most basic level, everyone kind of said, oh, it ended that way because there's going to be a part 2. And I was like, I doubt it.
No part 2.
No part 2. But I think the way it ended is kind of like how it began.
How so?
In the sense that, she gets into this panic.
Yes.
Because this guy, doing something that I would think is pretty standard.
Well, he's going down a switchback mountain on this bus, and he clearly is.
He doesn't know what
he's
doing.
A buffoon.
Yeah.
And he's getting dangerously close to the edge, and she's flipping out.
And
she says, get me off this bus.
Yeah.
And she just goes off by herself.
Yeah.
In a panic.
Of course, everyone else joins her.
Yeah.
But then I honestly cannot discern what the writers say. Like, what the writer...
Because then they all finally get off the bus. Mm-hmm. They're walking down this mountain, and the camera's just panning on their expressions.
Yeah.
Almost like ponder the movie, as it were. And he smokes. My wife interprets him accepting a cigarette from the guy. It
doesn't matter what happens to you in life.
Doesn't matter what happens to you in life.
And that's interesting. So the lady... Avalanche Man's wife.
Yeah, Avalanche.
I like that. Avalanche Man's wife. It seems like she has a moral compass.
Yeah.
That, yes, what her husband did was wrong, what this woman is doing is wrong, and what this bus driver is doing through his incompetence is wrong. So she has a strong moral compass.
Yes.
Then that's juxtaposed by her husband, who has this frayed moral compass.
Yes.
Then this friend that has this frayed moral compass.
Has no moral compass.
No moral compass. And then this bus driver who, from his own incompetence, is not realizing that he's putting other people in danger.
Yeah.
So then you have the other camp where you're just like, well, Jesus bared a great deal with Peter after Peter,
Sure.
But
then he denounced him.
He denounced
him. And he
him.
restored him.
Yeah. But then some people say, well, Peter was not saved. Don't offer them, we don't offer them this forgiveness like, okay, it doesn't matter, because it does matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a profound sense of teaching and training and prayer needs to take place in their life.
Well, the irony is that trying to be, like in this situation, manly means you got to humble yourself and you have to break yourself. So if somebody lapses, it's like, that's an egregious sin. But coming to the Lord and going, I really messed up.
Yeah.
And coming to the church and being open about that, I feel like there's restoration there.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. And I think that this movie, unwittingly or unknowingly, I should say, does that for us. It's just a great movie illustrating the gospel, and I don't know where it's at. But of the 3 questions that you asked, I do want to return to the one on the roles of men and women.
Okay.
And I want to ask you this question. We are faced with a society now in which in some quarters we're blurring the lines between men and women in terms of gender. Then in some quarters we're saying that, that women are equal to men in every respect. And then in another quarter, you sort of have this radical feminist who say that women should now be all in the Senate, all in the House to avoid toxic male masculinity. Right. Now, obviously, the movie didn't present the wife of Avalanche Man as a feminist.
No, not at all.
Not at all, not in the least. But how do you think, or what does this movie that was made 2 years ago, I think it was,
I can't remember the date. I can't remember the date.
Somewhere, might be longer. What does this movie tell us about our society?
Yeah.
That this wife would expect that her husband do that if she's a modern feminist.
Yeah, I think it shows, and I think it shows rightly, that we all instinctively know that there really are roles, if you don't want to say roles, responsibilities. But so here's the thing. I'm going to put the question kind of back to you, because I do wrestle with this. Because on the one hand, you can kind of have this image like a man is to be like John Wayne, right? But it's like, I don't know. You can be a man and not be a John Wayne.
Yes.
You can be a man and not be this the stereotypical stud, as it were, or jock, or whatever. Like, I know some pretty effeminate men that have been men.
Yeah.
And in my past. And so I kind of go, I don't know what to think exactly about, as it were, roles. But so I guess I tend to think of responsibility. Like, even if you're an effeminate man, you better step up and be a protector. Even if you're kind of a wimpy guy,
yeah,
you better be ready to defend, even if it means you lose.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say beyond that, because not everybody is the tough guy.
No.
So what does it mean then? What do you, in your mind, a role? What is it, a role? Like, are you taking on a certain persona? Are you taking on certain characteristics? I mean, what does role mean in your mind?
Yeah, I love all the things that you hit up on. There was this iconic picture, during the Texas flood, of this woman. She was holding a child, and then the man hoisting the woman on top of of him, and somebody took a photo of that, and they were just fighting over the photo, right? Yeah. One people say, okay, here's a real man. Here's a man doing what men ought to do, which is protect women and children, and here's a woman doing what women ought to be doing, nurturing children. Okay,
sure. I mean, very manly, picture, right? I think every man, yes, I want to be that guy rescuing the damsel in distress.
Exactly. But there was no nuance to the discussion, because I'm like, not every man can actually do that, physically do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not every man can physically do that. Not every man is capable of doing that. So the question isn't so much in strength or a certain genetic type that would lend itself to that. I think at root here are values. I think no matter who you are, like you said, as a man, you have to at least facilitate the ability to put food on the table.
Right.
And you have to at least facilitate a way in which you could defend someone, or fight off someone that's bigger and stronger than you if they come walking through the door, or you have a disability.
Yeah.
At the very least, you need to make sure that you have a home defense system.
Sure.
Or at the very least, you need to make sure that you own a weapon, or you maybe talk to your wife about the possibility, like going through steps in which if X happens, we need to do Y. So it's taking the leadership to say, okay, I know where my strengths and weaknesses are. I'm going to make sure I do the things that are my strengths, and I'm going to make sure that I buttress the things that are my weaknesses. So it's like taking the lead in those areas and figuring out that. I think as the head of the home, you have to do that.
So, okay. So on the one hand, I want to say, is there something to the way God created a man as in terms of nature?
Yes.
I want to say yes. There are certain things, qualities. Most of the time, men are stronger. Most of the time, X, Y, and Z. And women have other attributes. My wife is a powerful leader of the home in many ways.
Yeah.
I mean, she manages the home so well.
Yeah. My wife is better at certain aspects. I would say, okay, here, tell me what you think about this. As I have observed from the Bible, it would seem to me that the sort of the nexus of the difference centers on physiological differences, or differences of anatomy. That might be a better way. Yeah. It would seem like the differences are there because both men and women are given the command to be fruitful and multiply.
Right. Sure.
Right? I mean, at the very least, and anytime, like when Paul, even Mary, when the angel came to her, he calls her oh, you're highly favored. Why is she highly favored? Because she's the mother of our Lord.
Right.
That's a function of anatomy.
Sure. Right.
Right.
Right. Yes. Yes.
I mean, even though our world is not wanting to talk about that,
a womb is significant.
A womb is significant. I mean, who was it? Deborah is said to be the mother of Israel, right? Eve is the mother of all living, right? So there's an aspect in which anatomy does matter. But there's something about the anatomy that tells us about function. So that's how we reason. We reason from anatomy to function to exercising of the function.
And I want to say a hearty amen. There has to be something to that. Because is there any attribute that a woman has that a man doesn't have, or a man has that a woman doesn't? I can't think of any in terms of just unique attributes in terms of those kind of qualities. Now, let's just do it this way.
Yeah.
Let's say they're equal, but they're different levels to it. Like a woman has strength, but let's say naturally a man has more strength.
Yeah.
Women lead, but naturally men are given, more leadership.
Yeah.
So if they're equal in terms of the matrix of attributes, is it then just a difference of almost like a video game, like, ooh, my character is very strong, but his dexterity's low. Ooh, but this one's dexterity is really high, but his strength is low. Or beyond that, is it, no, God just crafted roles. Like by divine fiat, as it were. Like, no. I have structured this. Yes, you both have the same kind of attributes, but different strengths and different weaknesses that complement. But I have instituted roles and responsibilities in that structure. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. So, Aristotle has this discussion about good, right? Good in the moral sense and good and fitted for use. I think your discussion could be plopped into that, and that's found in Genesis where it says God created this, and it was good. That means it was fitted for the use to which it was assigned, right? Mm-hmm. So I would agree.
Right. As a helper, it was good.
It was good. It was role is sort of wrapped up in the good aspect, that the reason why it's good is because it conformed to the role to which it was assigned, right? Having said that, though, the only thing I would add in addition is roles only make sense in light biology and function.
You can't separate, can you? Really?
Can't. Feminism, or the parts of feminism that I think are unhelpful, is they want to separate the two. They want to say, no, biology doesn't matter.
Right.
The only thing that matters is we focus on the role. But I'm like, how can the roles make sense outside of function?
Did God fix the strength of a particular attribute to the biology to help accomplish the role, right? In other words, a man is naturally a provider. So he, most of the time, is going to be able to chop wood and do those kinds of things probably longer than a woman, than your typical woman. But is a woman just more tender and compassionate with children? A certain, let's say it this way, a certain softness there. I want to say yes. My wife certainly, she beats me in that category.
Yeah, what some people will tell you is because you have women that are Marines, or because you have some women that don't necessarily always conform to a specific way. So you're probably listening to you probably listen to More Perfect.
Oh yeah.
Did you listen to the last one?
Yes, I
with
did.
the reasonable man.
Yes.
I just found that conversation so incredible.
Yeah.
Because what they're essentially saying is God made man to have certain attributes that are consistent with all man.
Right.
That but differ with another particular thing.
Yeah.
And we can parse that out in almost every profession. We could parse that out in almost every walk of life. The same holds true when we think of men and women. There's a reasonableness standard when it comes to men, and a reasonable standard when it comes to women. When people go
God designed.
Yes.
God, we're agreed, right? God designed sphere of function.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And just because there are some people that might go outside of that doesn't negate the fact that this is still God's design function. Maybe someone has a heightened function that belongs to something else. Like, so you could have a woman that's stronger than you and I.
No, sure.
But that doesn't make her any less of a
UFC fighters that could probably take us.
Exactly.
Right.
But that doesn't make them more of a man. That just makes them more of a woman.
Right.
So, yeah, that's how I would kind of approach
so
that.
I guess taking this all back to the central thesis of the movie is when he ran, it showed, say, the lack of manliness and not protecting his children. I mean, that's just a fact. And that's why the women held him accountable. And that's why everybody kind of cringed when they saw the video. And that's why as you watching it go, oh man, you screwed up, man. Why do we know that? Because we're made in the image of God and we were made a certain way.
Yeah. I agree with you. Before our time is up, I want to ask you a question.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, there is a sense in which we look at this Mr. Avalanche and think, this guy's a scumbag. I would never do that, right?
I know. I know what you're going to ask, probably.
Okay, here's what I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
Am I more virtuous because I wouldn't do what he did?
Yeah, right.
Like, I mean, are you and I really saying because our predilections or you know, to maybe be cowardice in that way, because that's not what we would do, we're somehow more virtuous than him? Don't we do it in another way?
This reminds me, there's an essay by Thomas Nagel, the philosopher,
Yeah.
something called Moral Luck,
Yeah.
where basically we consider ourselves virtuous because we were never put in the situation where we would fail.
Exactly.
Right? So in other words, can you and I imagine scenarios where we would do that? And I go, that's hard, isn't it? Because I want to say that I know it's certainly within me.
Yeah.
I know there are certain situations with like hospital stuff, like disease and needles. Those are hard for me. I don't think the avalanche would have been hard for me. I think genuinely I would have grabbed my children.
Yeah.
But I think you could put me in a situation where it could press my buttons and it would really, really push me to the edge. So I guess the thing is, I think the way I look at it is, we're all made of dust. We all have our weaknesses. We do, as he said, have this nature in us that is a problem. But I think part of that is to recognize it, to die to that, and to ask God for help to overcome it, and to pray for future grace. Right? I'd like to think that if on the chopping block, I wouldn't reject Christ.
Yeah.
But I also know I am no better than Peter.
Yeah.
I know I'm no better than Peter. And so, yeah, I can't say I have a lot of moral virtue feeling, about these things. I think at the end of the day, you have to just, for me, you plead the mercy of God to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
You agree?
I mean, that's well said. In some quarters, I go back to, I do believe in moral training that conditions your heart and mind to do that. But at the end of the day,
I think that's undeniable.
It has to be undeniable. I think for you and I, it's undeniable because we have a framework for that.
Yeah.
Like we have, we go to church every day. We read our Bible. We go to church every week.
Sure.
We read our Bibles a lot. We wrestle with issues like this.
There are firemen, right?
Yeah.
Who go in the fire training to do really hard things.
Yes.
I think it's no different than moral.
It's no different from moral training. But I agree with you that there is a sense in which I didn't look at him and think I am better because I would do that. I looked at him though, and I addressed the issue of what I thought was his sin, which was cowardice, and say, no, you ought to have protected your family.
You should have protected.
The Bible says if you don't, you're worse than an infidel.
Isn't that interesting that you use that word? And at the end of Revelation, those who are in the outer darkness, one of the words included in this cowardice.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting.
A lot of people don't think about that, but cowardice is a sin.
It'd be something to bring out for another day, I think.
And in fact, timidity is a sin as well.
You're right. Right.
That's what Paul says. God had not given you a spirit. Most people say it is fear, but it's not phobos.
It's timidity.
It's timidity.
Well, remember that there's a proverb too. The unrighteous flee when there's no danger present.
That is true.
I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, no, that's what it is.
They flee when there's no danger present.
Yeah.
It's like the unrighteous do?
Yeah.
So does that mean that God is courageous? I would say Jesus went to the cross.
Yeah. I mean, the righteous, the proverb says the righteous are as bold as lions.
Yeah. So for us who are made of dust, I think we have to just cry, oh, help us, God. Because I know, I have failed and I know I will fail. But like you said, we have to daily train for these things. Yeah. When somebody tells the joke at work that's off color, if I'm not preparing, I will respond poorly.
Yeah.
You just will.
Yeah. That's very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This is loads of fun. We'll have you on again soon to do another podcast. Hopefully, the other part of Loop and Lou would be here.
Get the infirmed back in the mix.
In addition, if you would like us to address an issue, please let us know through going on the McElwain website and leaving something or via email. And Austin, normally I ask Loop if there are any words of wisdom, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have any words of wisdom?
Well, given our topic, I would say God gives grace to the humble, but opposes the proud.
That's well said. Well, thank you, brother, for stopping by, and we look forward to having you back on.
All right, thank you.
Email us at info@McElwainChurch.org. That's MCILWAIN, McElwainChurch.org. Visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/McElwain Presbyterian Church. Download our app at growingbygrace.crossapps.org.